Hello class, welcome back in our online discussion in this course, Strategic Management in Tourism and Hospitality. So we are now in lesson number 10, Understanding the Macro Environment. Again, there are two types of environment in the business world. We have macro environment and micro environment. I do believe you already undergo this kind of subject about the macro and micro, but it is only part of the course strategic management in lesson number 10 about the macro environment. So for the recap, I do believe that you're already done with this course or this subject in your previous year level. So I've shown you here the figure number 3 about the environment types, general and task environments. Again, when we hear the word environment, it is a group of individual or a group of organization or a team that can affect or can be affected by the business. So we have micro environment and we also have micro environment. So these are the list of micro environment we have shown you here in figure number 3. We have political or legal environment. We also have ecological environment and technological environment. We have socio-cultural. We have inside here the competitors, suppliers, and we also have here the customers and regulators. So we'll discuss only about the 5 different types of macro environment. So it should be noted that there is no clear demarcation between environment categories, but the boundaries are imaginary for the purpose of conceptualization and comprehension. So these categories form the 5 major subcategories of the macro environments that I will be showing you in the previously shown you in the figure number 2. So we will discuss in more details in the following sections. Again, we will focus on the 5 environment. In the macro environment, we have political environment, we have economic environment, we have socio-cultural environment, and also have technological environment, and lastly the ecological environment. Again, it affects the decision of the organization or business with these environments. Again, there are, I think you have noticed, for example, in your macro and micro subject, there are differences between the putting the category of the environment. So I think that is not really important, but the important here is we can able to understand the rule and how this group of environment affects the business or the organization. So for this module, we will discuss only about we will focus more on the political environment, and for the next module, we will discuss the remaining 4 macro environment. So we will just discuss first here the political environment because this is one of the largest, and this group of people or organization really gives a big impact to the business. So we will focus in this lecture about the political environment. So the political regulatory factors have been instrumental in defining how firms can maneuver, succeed, and expand in local and international market. So we have the transparent, we call it transparent legal and political systems, especially in the West, have enabled firms to use franchising as a mode of development in the international context. So there are business firms that they have used the franchising of their business to expand their business not just in local, not just in provincial, local, provincial, regional or national, but also in international context. So they have used this kind of mode of development or strategy that they called it franchising. And I do believe that you have already also determined some of the business firm who use this kind of system, the franchising. And firms are impacted by the regulations of the government related to human resource, especially to human resources management, ecology, technology, copyright and patent related issues, and market related factors and issues, including the handling customer related problems, especially if there are customers who are complaining on the products or services rendered by the organization or business firm. The feedback coming from the customers can push the government or in the political, environment to make a certain rule or policy that can affect the business firm. So, it's very important that we can able to provide the best quality of products and services to our customers. And the relation related to how tourism businesses are formed and how they need to be operated from human resources and ecological viewpoints are important to consider also from local and global perspective. So this is really the challenge of the business owners that they can able to, as we have discussed in the previous lesson about the globalization. So we adapt our business, we adapt our products and services depending on the culture, depending on the location of the establishment that we put our business. So there must have a modification of the products and services. Okay, depends on the locations and the culture. So we will not just consider the local perspective, but also the global perspective, especially if we will adapt uh, if our business will become an international. So that is on the part of the customers. Now for the employees relations perspective, due consideration should be given to legal issues related to human resources from different ethnic backgrounds, as well as the gender related issues. So in every business, we have employees and we also need to consider their perspective. There are employees who have different ethnic background. They have gender related issues. For example, the uniforms, if there's any policy, the uniform for the gender or LGBTQ community. And also we have different religions. So we need also to consider the different perspective or backgrounds of our employees. So there must have some modifications or change that we need to do. And some of these decisions is anchored with the legal or in the political sides. So there must have a changes in rules, regulations, and laws in the business environment that impact the firms that must be tracked. So again, it's important really the political environment. It really affects the business, especially in terms of legal basis, the rules and regulations, and others. And as a matter of fact, this is an important quote here that we need to be reminded also. The political environment is equally very important to consider because it influences the policies and decisions that impact all other environmental categories. As we have mentioned a while ago, there are five macro environment. We have political environment, the economic environment, socio-cultural environment, technological environment, and ecological environment. So this political environment also affects not just the business firm, but also these four remaining environment. So again, the political environment is equally very important to consider. Why? Because it influences the policies and the decisions that impact all other environmental categories. So policies in terms of, for example, in terrorism, related issues, including the safety, security, ecology, and so forth, are politically driven. So they impact the laws and the regulatory environment of the business. So they must be considered also in order to track changes in the environment. So I will show you here the table one. It's all about the general environment key variables or issues to track and analyze general environment variables or issues to track and analyze. So we will start here in the main area. which is the political. So we need to consider as a business firm in the organization or as a manager that there are regional policies. We have local policies. We also have provincial policies. We also have regional policies, and we also have national policies. And as we all know that there is an end of term in the executive, the government, in the governor, in mayor, and president, and others. So there is a change in the government. There's a big possibility that there's also change in the rules and regulations. Depends on the politician being elected on the position. Also, the terrorism, especially in the Philippines and the Mindanao part. We also have wars because of some wars happened in our nation or in our country. There are also modifications of the policies. So, because of this, we have the new regulations impacting business. Again, if there is a new regulations, it impacted the businesses. As you can observe here in the Philippines, with our new president Bongbong Marcos, they really implemented the taxation or the giving of tax from the business owners. So it affects the business owners. Okay, so they strongly implemented the giving of tax coming from the business owners. And what else? We also have including the minimum wage. We can observe also that the minimum wage is changing. In our time, way back, I think 7 years ago, as I worked in the resort, the minimum wage in Panglao is 278 per day. I think that is not for the regular. The regular is 310 pesos. And I do believe today in Panglao, in their minimum wage, it is increasing. So there are some changes happen in the business world. So it also affects also the decisions of the business owners. Not just the minimum wage, but also manufacturing and consumption of indigenous products and so on, especially if there's a scarcity of our materials. So there's also some changes, and also labor and hiring workforce locally versus form or from, I think this is a from abroad. So there are also some criteria that we need also to consider in hiring workforce from the local and from the abroad. And also there are policies related to ecology, including global warming, greenhouse gas emission, and so on. That is why there are also business owners who have the called it CSR or corporate social responsibility. We can relate that in our campus, in our institution in Ball Island State University, that we have annual, giving of services. For example, um, coastal cleanup or tree planting. So there are some policies, okay, to minimize the global warming or the greenhouse gas emission. That was that is why also the business owner from the automobile or in the car industry, they are also affected on these policies to avoid or to minimize the greenhouse gases emissions. So there are some modifications of their parts of their products or their cars. And also there are policies related to corporate and personal taxation. This is what I have mentioned a while ago. Now, this is not only for political. Again, the political environment is equally very important. Why? Because it influences also the policies and decisions that impacted all other environmental categories. That is why we also consider not just the political, but also the economic. The interest rate, okay? So if there's a policy that there is an interest rate, the inflation rates, GDP, gross domestic product growth rate, so the government or in the political environment, they are influencing also in the economic part. The cost of input factors, consumer price index, consumer confidence, price of oil and commodities, as we have experience now. Because of the increasing price of gasoline, it also affects the prices of other products. So as you can observe, there are also um, influences coming from the political that affects also the economic, not just the business itself. Also, in the stock markets, mortgage rates, balance of trade or export and import, exchange rates and purchasing power parity, corporate, personal, and capital gains taxes, availability of credit, and employment rate. So the political environment also affects the economy of a certain location or place or in our country. And also, it also affects the socio-cultural. So there are categories in the sociocultural. We have demographic changes, psychographic changes. We also have cultural change and other factors. Now, for under the demographic changes, we have birth and the death rates and the immigration, in which the also the immigration. Okay, there are two kinds of immigration here, and we also have age-related changes, gender-related changes, and educational-related developments. Okay, and also we have psychographic changes on the psychological part. We have lifestyle of the baby boomer generation. We also have lifestyles of generations X and generation Y. And we also have, I think we've missed here the millennials and the Gen Z or generation Z. And we also have cultural change, the multiculturalism. And we also have other factors like spread of virus, like coronavirus, work-life balance, terrorism, religion, and nationalism. Especially in this part, religion, we have different religion, we have different denominations, and we also have different views concerning what is good, what is bad, what is appropriate, and what is inappropriate. And it also, the political environment influences also on this part. And now let's proceed to the technology. Again, technology is also one part of the macro environment, but it also affected by the political environment. For example, the new technology related hardware, new technology related software, we have new technology application development of new products, investment in technology related research and development, safety and security related technology development. As you can, in case if you have heard a news, for example, in America, I don't know if it is already implemented, that they will ban the TikTok. Why? It is for safety and security. As you can observe or notice, once you will download the application, there is a terms of agreement. Uh, I think majority of us, we don't read word by word, sentence by sentence with the terms and conditions. But if we will read that one, there is a possibility that we allow the application to provide our even our personal information. That is why for safety and security, since TikTok, the owner of the TikTok is, I think it is a Chinese. So, there is a gap between the United States of America and the Chinese government. So for the safety and security purposes, I think they have blocked or they put some barriers or modifications of allowable access of TikTok to the user. Okay, so there's a safety and security related. So it affects the business of the TikTok because of the political, legal basis or regulations of the government in each country. And I think you also hear about the North Korea. So the people in the North Korea, they are not allowed to have their on the social media. They don't have Facebook, they don't have YouTube, they don't have Instagram. So they are affected by the policy of their government. And lastly, the ecological or about the environment. Demands of green products, supply of green products, global warming and greenhouse gas emissions, disposal of waste, recycling paper and landfills, deforestation of climatic changes, and protecting the natural environment. For example, in the resort, that is why there is a certain regulations that there must be 30 meters away. The building must have a 30 meters away from the seashore. Okay, so the political environment affects the decisions of the business. And also, for example, here the recycling paper and landfills or using plastics. That is why, as you can observe in the fast food chain, the McDonald's or the Jollibee have used a paper straw, or they don't provide a straw to apply or to follow the regulations of the government to protect our nature. So there are different um, sides of this five macro environment that affects or be affected by one of the macro environment, the political environment. I hope that you have learned something on this video, and don't forget to answer the evaluation quiz. Bye bye.